Hi, this is Carl Rust, and I've worked in schools for over 30 years. I've learned a lot about how people learn, and I wrote a book called Get Out of the Way and Let Kids Learn: How We Can Transform Schools and Reintroduce Natural Learning. Okay, welcome everybody to Get Out of the Way and Let Kids Learn podcast. And today we're fortunate to have as our guest Skylar Primm, and I'll let you tell people a little bit about what you do and where you're located and a little bit of your background.
My name's Skylar Primm, as Carl said, and I'm lead teacher at Koshkonong Trails School in Cambridge, Wisconsin. We're a place and project-based public charter school for middle and high school students in rural Wisconsin. And we're located at an outdoor learning center, so we're able to take kids outside pretty much anytime, any day, any time of the year to do outdoor learning, which is a pretty sweet gig. I've been in teaching for 15 years, and they've all been at project-based schools. And most of that time has been also at place-based environmental schools. So I've done a lot of work with outdoor learning and just with, the fun work of taking kids outside.
And how did you happen to come across that? I mean, was that something that you trained for in school or just how did you find out about this? Because I bet a lot of people don't even know that there is such a thing.
Yeah, I did not know there was such a thing. Um, I trained to be a geologist. I grew up in New Orleans, and you need to travel to find rocks if you grew up in New Orleans and you trained to be a geologist. So I ended up moving to Madison, Wisconsin for graduate school. And as part of that process, I got really comfortable with doing field science and going outside to learn was just kind of like how we did things. But I also got very comfortable with the idea that I was not interested in getting a PhD and becoming just a college professor or working for an oil company, which were my kind of the two paths that presented themselves to me. So I started looking at other options, and one of those options was teaching. And I got my master's in geology, and then left graduate school and got went through the teacher certification process here in Wisconsin, which involved just basically taking all the education classes. Um, and I was lucky enough that my um, uh, student teaching was at an alternative school, and so that alternative school was just outside of Madison in one of the suburbs here. And it included close relationships, circles. So we started every class with a circle. It was still a pretty traditional model. We had block schedule. We had separate classes, for science and math and that sort of thing. But my cooperating instructor started every class with a circle. She took every opportunity she had to use the outdoors for our learning. We had a community garden. We were near a creek that she would use for like water sampling and that sort of thing. And so she really introduced me to this idea that the community could be a place for learning beyond just the classroom walls right away when I was doing my student teaching. And then I lucked into again, like my first job right out of getting my certification was at a non-traditional alternative school. Again, just south of Madison. That it was called Tagos Leadership Academy. That was a public charter that valued student autonomy, teacher autonomy, thinking outside the box. One of the components of the program there was, gosh, I can't remember what we called them at this point, but they were basically like experiences outside the classroom. And it was at least monthly, we would do something where we had a bus and we would take kids just away from the school, whether that was out into the community to go to a museum, um, or to volunteer at a shelter for unhoused people, or to go explore the outdoor um, like nature center or those sorts of things. Just something that got them outside of the classroom. And it wasn't super integrated into the regular classroom work, so it was kind of a separate thing, but it was part of the expectation for students that they would participate in those things and that they would get credit for it. uh, and it was just something that we did as a community, and so it helped build connections between students. It helped build connections between teachers. It helped, again, students recognize that like the community was part of the learning process. um, but then after 2 years there, I met somebody who kind of has become a mentor of mine, Victoria Rydberg Nania, who now works for the public Department of Public Instruction of all things, here
Hmm.
in Wisconsin, as the environmental education consultant. But she really kind of got me into environmental education and, in particular, outdoor education as a context for learning. And from that point forward, that's just been kind of for the last 12, 13 years, has just been um, my gosh, I don't even know what the word is, just my jam, I guess.
Yeah.
Has just been getting kids outside.
So how many kids do you work with in the program?
So at my current school is 28. So we have 28 students, two teachers. My previous school was about 32 to 36 students. So they're small schools. They're not micro, I
Hmm.
guess, but they're small.
It's pretty small. Um, so now thinking back to your own growing up and experiencing school as a kid, what are your earliest memories of school?
Yeah, so I went to school at my elementary school was, when I was first growing up, it was busing distance, and then when I was in like fourth grade, we moved to walking distance from the same school. But my earliest memories are my kindergarten teacher, and my mom just mentioned this to me the other day because I was wearing a shirt with Ranger Rick on it. That my kindergarten teacher would let me read Ranger Rick magazines, um, because I would finish the work in the classroom quickly, and that was my like, accelerated. Uh, we don't know what to do with you, so we're gonna let you read Ranger Rick magazines in the corner. Um, uh, Work. So I just remember doing that, and being very happy, uh, kind of on my own doing that.
So you probably came to school already kind of having a lot of knowledge and skills and contrasted to maybe some of your peers that didn't have that.
I
Did that
did.
did
Yeah.
that kind of continue on, or was there a point where things kind of caught up with you, or were you always kind of
Things
ahead of the curve a little bit?
things kind of caught up with me. Both my parents, you know, I was in New Orleans. I was a white kid. Both my parents had college degrees, so I was, you know, pretty privileged, just to start with.
Mhm.
And then I attended, after my elementary school, like I said, I attended my like just my neighborhood school. But then I started attending magnet schools for
Mhm.
junior and senior high school. So um, at that point, again, lots of privilege to have attended those schools, long bus rides to get there. But that's where like suddenly it was like that, uh, just the metaphor of the big fish in the little pond. I suddenly was like, oh, there's a lot of other smart kids out there, who who know a lot of stuff. Um, and so then I was really challenged, starting in, I don't remember being super challenged in elementary school, but definitely in junior high, and especially in high school, I was um, really challenged by my teachers, which was, um, you know, I think at the time was hard, but in retrospect was great. Was what I needed.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, was that a positive or a negative? Sounds like it was a positive, looking back on it.
Yeah, looking back on it for sure. I think at the time I definitely had a lot of conversations with my mom in particular about, um, you know, struggling and not feeling smart, because it was hard, because you go through that thing, and I see this in my own students now. um and it's helpful to be able to like talk to them about that, where you go from like everything is really easy. And then you don't have to work for it. And then you hit that wall where suddenly you actually have to work for it. And if you've never experienced that before, you think that, oh, I'm a failure and I can't do it. If you've got that, kind of fixed mindset. Uh, Whereas if you can push through it and realize like, oh, actually that just means I'm learning. That level of discomfort, that level of challenge means that that's what it actually means to learn. That's what growth is.
So, did you have siblings or other
I
family
did not.
members that you had, friends, family that were experienced school maybe in the same or different ways, or
Yeah, so I was an only child. My mom was also super good at school, and actually went to the same like magnet high school as I did. It was one of the Sputnik schools that was that was opened when we were really worried that the Soviets were gonna dominate the United States in the Cold War. But my dad had like the exact opposite experience of school. My dad hated school. Um, my mom kind of dragged him through school. He was extremely smart, but hated following the rules, hated uh, listening to somebody else tell him what to do, that sort of thing. He ended up getting a philosophy degree in college, which I think probably is not uncommon for people that don't like to follow the rules if they end up getting through college. Um, and but my mom, got an English degree, worked for the federal government for her entire career, and retired and is perfectly content, and still like loves going to, learning, loves to continue learning. My father unfortunately passed away when I was 18, so I'm not sure
oh,
what
sorry.
his thank you. He was in his 40s. He's just a couple years older than I am right now, which is I'm getting to that point where it's like, oh, this is getting a little weird. But um, so I don't know how he would have how his relationship with learning would have shifted as he got closer to retirement age. But I know that he loved learning. He just hated doing it in any kind of structured format where somebody else was telling him what to do. And I think he would have benefited from a school more like what we have uh, the opportunity for students to have now. Um, Anything that where it was, this is what you're going to learn today, this is what you're going to read today, and this is what it means, was just not his thing at all.
So, for you personally, how do you go about learning yourself? If there's something that you want to find out about, what do you kind of do in your life?
It's a really good question. I think I try to do a lot of different things. These days, I always feel so pressed for time, except in the summer. That
Hmm.
uh, I think that I try to do a lot of things. I try to look for podcasts and YouTube videos, because those are things where I feel like I have a little more ability to, like listen while I'm on my way to work, or if I'm doing something really rote, like emptying the dishwasher or something, something that I don't have to put my brain to use at. I can't like read a book while I'm doing that. Um, I have a giant stack of books like right next to me and to the left. Like I have all these books that I definitely use books a lot. Um, but more and more I find that it's hard for me to take the time to learn from books. I think that online sources have really become really a lifeline for me, finding who's doing interesting work on this, who's talking about this online, um, and what can I learn from them. Um, when it comes to things, I guess that's kind of where when it comes to like education related things. When it comes to like the other stuff that I like learn a lot about is, you just by partially by virtue of being an outdoor educator, partially just because it's what I'm into, like nature stuff, I use a lot of apps. There's the iNaturalist app is an app that where you can take pictures of things and upload it and find out, get a pretty good idea of what the bug is or what the
Mm-hmm.
plant is, and then that'll send me down a rabbit hole of like learning what that is, what that species is, and what it's doing here, and whether that's common or not, that sort of thing. So uh, that's another avenue that I guess that I use.
So tell me a little more about this, the kids that you work with. So there's middle school age to high school. So what would be the age range there?
Yeah, so it'd be about 12 to 19, roughly. I'm finding mostly 12 to 18. We don't have a ton of students that are in that. I was young for my grade. I didn't turn 18 until right before college started. And I'm finding I don't know if this is a trend or not, but I'm finding I don't have a lot of students that are turning 19 as seniors right now. But yeah, they're 12 to 18 and they work together. Um, they're not like segregated by grade.
Hmm.
They're um they're mixed age, like a one room schoolroom kind of thing.
So what would a day look like if we were kind of popped in to see how things were going?
Yeah, so we a small building. We're a it's a manufactured building that, yeah, has 4 rooms. So 2 main classrooms, one breakout space, and then one like library slash kitchen. And our students would generally start the day in one of the 2 main classrooms, checking in with which, depending on which advisory classroom they're in, that's where they would start their day. So they would be checking in with their teacher, um, doing kind of the basics of the start of the school day, checking, what's going on today, what's the schedule, ordering lunch if they need it, just all the like logistical stuff for
Hmm.
the day.
Hmm.
Um, After that, just depending on what, we end up adjusting our schedule each year depending on what the partially on what the needs of the students are, and also partially our students are able to take classes through the local high school and middle school, mostly band and choir, but also some of the like more specialized like welding and those sorts of things classes.
Hmm.
So if we have a ton of students gone at first hour of the morning, we're not going to schedule a lot during that hour, just because we don't want to miss all of them. But in general, the first chunk of the morning is going to be doing some sort of culture building. We might have a circle, so we might be doing some kind of a activity or discussion with the students for a little bit. Then we would usually go into some form of either independent student work or teacher-led seminar style work. So we don't have traditional classes. We don't have, well, now it's time um, for biology class, and we're going to do that for an hour every day until the end of the semester. We'll say, okay, Teresa is going to teach a genetics seminar for the next 8 weeks. We ordered these flies, and she's going to run that on Monday and Friday for an hour. So a little more collegey, I
Hmm.
guess, in that
Hmm.
regard. So some students might attend that while the other ones are working independently on project-based work. They'll have an hour somewhere in there where they're working on their math. We use an online math program that isn't, it's not the best thing in the world. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's fine. It and I do my background, like I said before, is in science and math, and so I provide um, just one-on-one support with students during that time. Um, During lunch, we'll usually have some students outside, some students inside, kind of spread around the school. There's not like, we have that I mentioned the lunchroom, but that's really more of it's like a kitchen. There's a
Hmm.
microwave, there's a fridge, there's food prep space for them. Some students do eat lunch in there, but a lot of students just kind of eat lunch spread throughout the space, depending on their preference. There's not that like loud traditional lunchroom space. We'll have a little bit of time, usually after lunch. We'll have some active time for the students. We call it lifetime fitness, because there's, as I'm sure that you and your audience know, there's could be some negative connotations of physical, with PE can have
Hmm.
negative connotations for a lot of kids. Um, and what we're trying to build is, skills for students to use throughout their lives. Most people don't play dodgeball in their 40s. I'm sure there are some,
Right.
but we're trying to teach them skills that they're gonna just physical skills. Lately gaga ball has been extremely popular, which is in a circle and they're knocking a ball around. Whatever they want to play, usually we'll also do hikes around the property, because we have that option. Just anything to get them moving after lunch is really helpful, because we used to do reading after lunch, and that just put everybody to sleep. So we needed to adjust the schedule. We will do some reading at some point, some directed reading time. Usually that is 30-ish minutes, depending on what the stamina of the kids is. And that's choice. That's not, okay, we're all going to read The Great Gatsby right now. That's Everybody needs to read something. I personally don't have a preference whether they're reading on paper or on their screens. I'd rather they read on paper just because they spend a lot of time on screens.
Mhm.
But that's not for some of my students, they just I just need to be flexible with their needs. And so I'm not a huge fan in general of hard and fast rules, because inevitably I have a student who needs something that is going to, on some level, break that rule, and then I look like a
Mhm.
hypocrite. And so
Mhm.
I just um, try to remain flex. I try to have a flexible structure, I guess, in my day. Uh, Sometimes there'll be a second seminar in the afternoon or some other, and just a lot of time for students to work on their own stuff. Uh, for me personally, what you would see me doing is just bouncing around from student to student, pretty much all day long. Like I said, there will be some times when I would be doing some sort of instruction through that seminar, but the rest of the day is usually going to be me uh, sitting with students one on one. I don't spend a lot of time during the school day at my desk. One positive thing about our school day is that uh, the because of our location off site from the regular buildings, we have to have a shuttle service bus for our students. So that means our day starts later and ends earlier. So I've got a little bit of like 45 minutes um, of contracted time at the beginning and end of the day. That's not official school time with the students. There are definitely students there, because parents need to drop kids off early or pick them up late. So I'm still supervising kids, but I'm not quote unquote teaching. And so that ends up being kind of the time that I spend on email and all the other uh, paperwork stuff that you have to do as a teacher, unfortunately. Um,
So are families choosing your program, or is that and what kind of
yeah,
do you feel like you get a certain type of learner in there, or is it a variety?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that so we just finished year 6 of the school's existence, and based on my experience in my previous school, which I came in at my previous school, I came in year 2 and left in year 13. Uh, it really took this long to build um, the reputation and kind of even just the like vision and the view of what the school is in the community, so that people understood that like this is what the school offers, not so that people could understand that they're choosing the school for what it is, not just because it's not the traditional school.
Hmm.
Because I think that that often happens when you have something new open. It's like, oh, good, it's not the regular school. I'm going to choose that.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter what it is,
Right.
what it offers. Doesn't matter if my kid has to be outside all the time and they hate the outdoors. I don't care as long as it's not a regular classroom.
Right.
Um, so I think we've gotten to the I think we're getting to the point, I should say, um, where we parents, mostly through word of mouth, I think recognize that like it's a school that benefits students who um, have at least don't have an antipathy for the outdoors.
Hmm.
I don't, our focus is technically like our mission and vision are for agricultural and environmental education. Um, and I think that we certainly attract students that have those two interests, but we also attract students who are anxious about a large school, who don't um, do well in um, large classrooms, who also don't do well, kind of like my dad, in that setting where somebody is just telling you what to do all day long. Students that have formerly been homeschooled will come to us sometimes after, sometimes families will homeschool for elementary school and then reach a point where um, they want a little more structure for their students, but not a traditional classroom. And that's where we've been able to have a pretty successful uh, kind of transition for those students. Um, and about half of our kids come from surrounding school districts in Wisconsin. We have open enrollment uh, laws here, and so we bring in students from other school districts as well, who are interested in what we're doing.
So you're considered to be a charter school,
We are, yeah,
so you get public funding for kids that come to you.
that's correct, yeah, yeah, and
Okay.
we're ultimately responsible to the local school district as well.
So how much oversight do they exercise? I mean, are they kind of peeking over your shoulder or leaving you alone, or what are they? How is that working out?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. In my experience, it really depends on the district and the administration. I think that our currently, I would say that we're in a pretty sweet spot where our administrator, so we have a prince, so we're teacher led. I'm the lead teacher. Most of our, um, like our expenditures, our budget, uh, anything like discipline related, um, schedules, like all of those things, like we pretty much handle in house with very little oversight. Our administrator is there mostly for uh, advice, when I need advice or certain things that just legally are not um, allowed for teachers to do. So, in Wisconsin, I can't evaluate my colleagues, and my
Mhm.
colleagues can't evaluate me. I think that there's a case to be made that that should be okay, but that's just not, it's not allowed.
Mhm.
He does not second guess our decisions, at least in my experience. He will give us feedback if we're saying, like, hey, we're thinking about doing this. What do you think would, based on your experience with way more situations like this, just because he's had to, we're a small school, we have a small number of people, we deal with a much smaller number of, say, um, a parent who's upset because this happened between these two students. He deals with way more situations like that than
Mhm.
I do.
Mhm.
So he has a much broader, uh, uh, you know, catalog of experiences to draw from. Um, so that's mostly what he provides for us. Uh, I think that the district itself, as far as oversight goes, I think they mostly leave us alone. I report to them once a quarter, to the school board. When I say them, to give them an update on just kind of what we've been up to. And it's just, here's some of the things that we've done. Here's some things we're proud of. Here's what we're working on. Here's our enrollment numbers. And there's rarely questions. It's not hostile. It's just a thanks for letting us know. We appreciate
Hmm.
it.
Interesting.
And then we move on. I know that, in other districts I've been in, that has not been the case. So I feel very, very lucky that we're not in a um, negative relationship. I think that what helps is that we have our own board, for the charter school, our governance board, and we have a liaison from the school board that attends those monthly meetings, and they're very involved. In my previous district, we had a liaison who was super involved, and it was great. We had another liaison who like never attended because it conflicted with their schedule, and they just were never there, and that did not work well. We have a very involved liaison, so they know what we're up to, they know what we're doing, they know what we need, they know what we don't need. And I think that level of communication and connection, I think really benefits both sides, because it keeps us from being that mysterious school out in the woods,
Yeah, yeah.
which I think is where those problems start, is when like there's an unknown out there.
So what do you think would be your maximum enrollment? You said it became
So
popular and
yeah, so there's a physical limit on the space. I can't remember exactly what it is. Um, it's somewhere between 50 and 60 is like the um fire limit on our building. Our model calls for there to be 14 to 1 ratio for
okay.
teachers to students. So I think that with the space that we have, we could conceivably go to 3 teachers with 42 students.
Mhm.
I don't think that capacity wise, even though I think the building maybe could do 56, I don't think that logistically it would work.
Mhm.
And the other question is like, where does it make sense financially to we don't have 14 kids on a waiting list. Where do you go from, okay, now it's time to hire 3 teachers? Um, right now we have, I think, 2 students on a waiting list. That's not the point where you jump to another.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's the and you would ask me about like if I learned about outdoor education in teacher training. I also didn't learn about like these kind of budget questions and enrollment and all this, all these things in teacher training. This is all stuff that I had to learn on the job, and continue to learn on the job as well.
Well, 14 to 1 is pretty sweet. I mean, I just finished a year where it was
It is.
15. I had 15 kids, and that was pretty nice compared to some of the years in the past when I was teaching in an elementary classroom where I had 30, 32 kids, sixth graders who are big
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
That's crazy difficult to do that
Yeah.
well. And I just had our substitute teacher meeting was just yesterday, and I talked to a couple friends of mine, and they were talking about some local school system is just really suffering from lack of teachers and trying to figure out what to
Hmm.
do logistically when you have all these kids and you don't have enough teachers. So 14 to 1 sounds
Yeah.
pretty good. I mean, um, so you brought up screens, and that's kind of an interesting question for me because it's something I've struggled with. It wasn't such a big deal when I was still in the classroom because we just didn't really have very many. I think I had
Yeah.
when I left the classroom, I think I had 2 Apple computers in the room. And I can't remember
Hmm.
if we even had a computer lab at that point. We might have had a computer lab, but as far as classroom, it was 2 Mac computers, and of course, nobody had cell phones or anything like that. So How is that? How does that impact you guys?
Oh, how many hours do we have? Um,
Yeah.
we're one to one. Our students have Chromebooks
Mhm.
assigned to them. So they have a device, uh, at all times. They can use at all times. Not well, I shouldn't say that they can use at all times. That available
It's
to them.
available, sure.
It's available. Yeah. Um, we our cell phone policy, we is just we're constantly trying different things, just like everybody is. I and my personal philosophy on cell phones is that we should be teaching kids how to use them responsibly, because that's how life is. We just need to learn how to use these tools, and that's been my philosophy. The whole this whole during this whole change, because I started 15 years ago. Some students had phones, some didn't. iPhone had um, just come out a couple years before. The kids with iPhones were the rich kids, and it was very unusual. Um, so I've watched as it's become basically like every kid has a cell phone. I have one student right now who doesn't. I think just one, um, or last year. Practically though, it's really, really hard to stick with that. Partially because the companies behind the social networks, and the phone software, are just so nefarious. And the the things are so addictive. And I mean, it's hard for adults to not check them all the time. So I don't know. I don't, it's like I don't have a responsible relationship with my phone. So I don't know how to teach my students how to have a responsible relationship with their phone. Um, I don't think that getting into fights over them is helpful. I don't think fighting with parents over them. I think we need something. I think we need to come together with parents and students and figure something out, because all the different things that we've done have not worked. I don't think just throwing them all in pouches at the door is going to help, because I think there's real school safety concerns. The unique, um, oh, I will take a step back, before I say that. That are at right now at our school, it's been kind of um, if you're responsible, I have older students. If you're responsible, you can have your phone on you. If you're not responsible with it, we'll have conversation, and you might have to put your phone like on my desk or in your bag or in your locker or something. Kind of like I said earlier about there being. I don't like to have hard and fast. This is the clear rule, because there's going to be kids who need their. I met a kid a couple weeks ago. From the regular middle school whose phone whose phone gives the like hypo, I don't know if it's hypo or hyperglycemia, but gives diabetic alerts, because
Mhm.
that's connected to his blood sugar monitor, and so like that's a life saving medical device that he needs. Something that's a little unique about our school is that, I mentioned that we can do hikes. I will let some students go for a hike in a pair on our, students that I know well and that I trust. I'll let them go on a hike on part of the property that they know if they have a phone with them. um, you
Mhm.
know, because I know that if there's an emergency, they'll be able to contact me. Um, and if I just had a hard and fast rule, no cell phones, or the cell phones are in a pouch or whatever, I wouldn't be able to allow that. So I that was just a lot of rambling about it,
Mhm.
because which
Mhm.
I think tells you that like I have no idea.
Yeah.
I I think that, in a perfect world we would just have not invented them, to be honest. I love my phone. Like I love all the things that it allows me to do. I talked about iNaturalist earlier today. I'm walking my
Hmm.
dog and I see some cool bug and I take a picture of it. And I get to learn about it. But on the all things considered, I think that it's more of a pain in the butt than anything. But um we try to get our back to like technology in general. We get our kids out. We have a really great uh, library media specialist in our district who, and we have, we've been working really hard to um, we have a really positive relationship with her, and we've been really working hard to keep that relationship, uh, that connection. Uh, and so we take our students over to the middle school and over to the high school to visit the library there, to look for books that are related to the topics that they're interested in, or just books in general that they want to read. She's also helped us stock our own library at our school using district library funds that we learned last year we were entitled to also be part of. And so we try to find um, ways to help students recognize that there's value in other sources than just their Chromebook, um, uh, as tools, so that when they are spending so much time staring at their screens, we're able to be able to say, "Hey, let's take a look at these books that we have over here also." Um, and I think that that's been really helpful having the library media specialist involved in that, because she's able to stay way more current than I am in terms of like what's new and what's valuable in print books. The other thing is that we have, because we're on this outdoor learning center and we have this beautiful outdoor space, uh, and we have farm animals on our property, that we're able to just be like, you know what, we're going to go visit the goats right now. You guys have been staring at screens, and I know that my head hurts from this, so I'm certain that yours are too. So we're all going outside right now, and we're going to go say hi to the goats and the chickens, and we can do that and get kind of a, you know, um, resettle ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, I found in the past when I was running a alternative program where we had kids that were they didn't all have cell phones, but we had desktop computers and we had other things. But if we said we were going on a field trip or going outside, 99% of the kids would jump up and want to go. So
Hmm.
the lure of the outdoors is a great. Even this past year, I had some kids, even though they weren't technically supposed to have their phones out, they did. But if it was
Yeah,
time to go outdoors, they would put them away. So
yeah.
a lot of times I'd leave them laying in the middle of the floor and I'd say, wait a minute, we can't leave this phone laying here on the floor. Um, so I'm wondering, have you had kids that just didn't want to do anything or didn't were disagreeable and it didn't seem like they wanted to participate with anything? And what did you do about that?
Yes. um I, I'll try different tactics with students like that until I figure out what works. Patience, I guess, is kind of number one. Is just getting um and recognizing that it's not about my time frame. Yes,
Mhm.
there's some like systemically imposed time frame that we're all a little bit beholden to, and that we all need to worry about somewhat. But at the same time, like me standing over them and saying, "You got to get this done. You got to get this done. You got to get this done," isn't going to make them work any faster. I mean, that's just going to make things. That's going to make them slower, frankly. It certainly would make me slower if I was already in a um, not getting work done mood. Um, some students, I yeah, depending on depending on my relationship with them, if it's somebody that I've just met, it's early in the school year, versus if it's like later in the school year, or if it's somebody that I know um, responds well to a lot of choices versus somebody that responds well to like not a lot of choices, depending on their particular brain. Uh, I might say, here's a bunch of different things you could do. Give it to them and walk away. Because some students just need a lot of time to decide, and they need no pressure at all from me bearing down on them and saying like, you got to pick one of these things to do. Some students may need me to say like, you got to pick one of these two things. Here they are. What are we going to do? It just really, really depends on the kid. And some kids may just need me to acknowledge that, like, hey, we're not going to get anything done today, are we? Um, just, don't bother anybody else while you're doing it, and we'll try again tomorrow. And I think that acceptance of kids as individuals is better in the long run, because it builds your relationship and it sets them up to get to be more conducive to getting, you know, something done the next day, than wrestling them into doing something, some small amount of under duress work today would.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I just want to reinforce that because struggled with that off and on over the years. And I don't think if you kind of play the mind experiment out in your mind and you think, okay, what is it I want from this kid right now? And if I win, so to speak, and they do the thing, whatever the thing is that I'm asking them to do, did I really gain anything in the long run or did I lose? And I think if you really think
Right.
about it carefully, you really lost. It's
Yep.
worse to make a kid do something they don't want to do than just let them sit there for a while. And I remember um, the guy from Sudbury Valley, Daniel Greenberg, always talked about boredom
Hmm.
is not bad. Boredom is a good
Right.
thing because that's how you get stirred to do something. And I've seen it
Hmm.
myself, and I've read lots of accounts. Just interviewed Josh Pickle, who was at Arrow when I met you at Arrow and Josh at
Yeah.
Arrow. And he was telling the story about this kid that never did anything, just on his phone all the time. And then one day he came in and he had all these sticky notes all, he was ready to do something. And he had designed
Yeah.
this thing himself. He came up with an idea. And it's like, it's so easy for adults to start to panic, think, oh my gosh, what is going on here? This kid is just never going to do anything. And
Yeah.
then kind of spoil it in a way. And so I see that in conventional classrooms all the time. It just makes me really shake my head about what did you gain? Because, well, myself, I had a student years and years ago that didn't want to do anything. And one day I just put my foot down and said, you're going to do this paper and you're not going to recess until you get this paper done. Well,
Hmm.
this is an intelligent kid. He looked at the paper. There's like five questions on there. He scratched something out on the paper and handed it to me and said, okay. And what was I to do at that point? I mean, what he put down was crap.
Yeah.
I could have dug in and said, no, you're going to do it.
I know you can do better. Yeah.
But so what did I really gain by insisting on that? I knew a kid in another class. I wasn't the teacher, but he had like, this was one of these teachers that tracks missing assignments from like
Yeah.
forever. And this kid had like 100 missing assignments. And it's like, what is the point of this? He was
Yeah.
inside every day at recess. He never, and when I became assistant principal, one of the things I talked the principal into, it's tough in conventional schools, but I said, so we came out with this saying, everybody's got to have some recess. He wasn't willing to
Yeah.
say, you can't take recess, which I would have done in a heartbeat. I would have said, can't take away
For
recess.
sure. Yeah.
But at least he said, everybody's got to have some recess, got to get outside and do some recess. Oh, well, small victories, but um,
Yeah.
so sounds like a great program. I'd love to come visit sometime, but um, I'm wondering, even though you're kind of in your in some ways you could say you're kind of in your ideal world. What if, they called you up and said, "Hey, we want you to take control of 200 or 500, or we want you to take control of this building." What would be your ideal, or if you could wave your magic wand and just transform all
Hmm.
schools, what would your ideal school look like?
Yeah, I think, in general, I think that my ideal school is going to be different from any, your ideal school and her ideal school and their ideal school. And I think that that's what I really appreciated about the Aero conference was how diverse everything was about it. Is that like, and that's been something that I've talked about kind of since I started teaching, was that like once I got exposed to like all these alternative models of schooling, I was like, wow, there should really be a school for everyone. But for me, my ideal school would be a space where easy access to the outdoors. We're located maybe, Wisconsin has a strong tradition of school forests. Almost I I'm gonna say almost every because I'm not sure it's every, pretty sure it's every, but almost every school district has a school forest. They're generally kind of tragically underused, but
Hmm.
has some property that's a school forest. That's just that we use the heck out of in my previous district. We would bus out there many many times a year uh, to do projects. Perhaps it'd be located at the school forest. Perhaps it would just be very close, walking distance, so you wouldn't have to worry about transportation. Um, I would have. I was talking to somebody who's in a new building, new elementary building, where they were talking, or maybe it's a middle school, where they're talking about having, dividers in the rooms, which is a really old concept, but where you could just like divide the room or not divide the room between
Mhm.
classes so that you can have flexible space for teaching. So you could have interdisciplinary really easily, but you can also um, block out space as needed for when you need a breakout space for, you know, the kid that is just going to read Ranger Rick all day. Um, uh, I also think we need way more flexible seating, all kinds of seating for kids. I don't really, um, I think you can lice proof most things. So I don't think we need to worry about whether it's what kind of we can figure out the upholstery. Um, but kids should be able to lie on the floor. They should be able to rock. They should be able to lie on their backs. They should be able to sit upright if they want to, like whatever. Lots of different seating. Uh, that's kind of how I would envision the physical space. Is I think the that flexible structure that I mentioned is kind of like should be part of the physical concept of the building. Um, I would want just the school to be heavily tied to the community and the space that it's in, so that the work that the students do is uh, connected to the local community and the local history and the local culture and the needs of the local community, the local ecology, but also is making a difference there so that it's not just let's learn about this static thing um, around us. It's let's learn about it and participate in it. If it's civics, how can we learn about our local government and um, participate within it? If it's ecology, how can we help with, preserving our school forest or making it more, restoring it to a more native state or whatever state we're going for. Um, that's, I guess sustainability would be a big focus in my mind. Um, and mixed age spaces. I don't know that. I mean, if we're looking at a 500 student school, I don't know if I don't know how like having not taught in a school that big or in I don't know how feasible it would be to have fully mixed ages, but I think that having more opportunities for mixed age spaces would be wonderful. Something that also came out of my student teaching was I had when I was student teaching, I was with the science teacher all day, even though I was only actually student teaching for like physical science and space science, but she also taught physics, and because I wasn't getting licensed in physics, and physics was a senior level class. And once a week, I don't know if it was once a week or every other week, but she would get a van and drive that physics class over to the elementary school, and the kids would work with um, kindergartners on reading skills, like just as like listeners for the kids to read to. And I would get to go with them as the student teacher, and just that little connection was just awesome. And it was so, but also it was so unusual. And I don't think that should be unusual. Like, I don't think that seniors connecting with kindergartners should be weird. I think that
Right.
should just be
Right.
the norm.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you doing this, Skylar, and I hope you have a great school year next year. And
Thanks very much.
tell me the name of your school again. I need to write it down and spell it for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, it's Koshkonong Trails. It's Koshkonong
Trails.
Trails.
Well, if there's any special links or anything you want me to put in the show notes, send those to me. And I
Okay.
didn't even get to a chance to really ask you about the teacher-led, teacher-powered schools thing. Maybe we can
Yeah.
talk again sometime about that.
Yeah, I'd love that.
But like I said, would love to come and visit sometime. So
Yeah, I'd
let's
love to
keep
have
in
you
touch
anytime you're up this way. Yeah.
and well, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump
Oh, yeah,
kind
that's
of.
true. You're just next door. Yeah.
I'm in Elkhart, yeah. Well, Chicago is the big barrier in between. That's the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Let me do my little closing thing here.
All right.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe so you can be notified each time a new episode comes out. Check out my book, Get Out of the Way and Let Kids Learn: How We Can Transform Schools and Reintroduce Natural Learning. A couple of podcasts I recommend are Liberated Podcast with Carrie McDonald and Fair of the Free Child with Akila Richards. Check out my band, The Rush Show, at therushtshow.com and all streaming platforms. Thanks for listening. Remember, get out of the way and let kids learn. This has been Get Out of the Way and Let Kids Learn podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe, follow, share, and leave a comment.